Close your eyes for a moment and picture America in 1870. The Civil War is just 5 years past. The frontier is still wild. There are no cars, no planes, no electric lights. The future runs on steam, on coal, and on a new mysterious substance bubbling up from the ground in Pennsylvania. Oil. In Cleveland, Ohio, a 31-year-old man stares at ledger books in the flickering gaslight. He is not a swashbuckling industrialist. He is quiet, meticulous, a devout Baptist who avoids the saloons and the stock exchange frenzy. His name is John D. Rockefeller, and at this moment he controls a modest 4% of America's capacity to turn that crude oil into useful kerosene. Now, hold that image. Fast forward just 10 years, to 1880. That same quiet man now controls not 4%, not 50%, but 90% of all the oil refining in the United States. He has annihilated or absorbed hundreds of competitors. He dictates terms to the mightiest railroad barons. In a single decade, he has achieved a level of market dominance that borders on the absolute. But he's not done. By 1904, his empire doesn't just refine oil. It owns the wells, the pipelines, the tank cars, the barrels, the distribution networks, and the final sale. He controls 91% of production and 85% of final sales. He is, by any definition, a monopoly. The first true corporate titan of the modern world. And in 1911, in a grand act of judicial defiance, the US government shattered his company, Standard Oil, into 34 pieces. It was hailed as a victory for competition, a death blow to monopoly. This is where the history books often end the story. The evil giant was slain. The end. But I'm here to tell you that story is a fairy tale. The 1911 breakup wasn't an ending. It was a metamorphosis. The gasoline you pumped into your car this week, it almost certainly came from a descendant of those 34 pieces. The online marketplace where you buy everything from books to groceries, with its own delivery network and cloud computing empire. It operates on Rockefeller's core playbook, the tech giant that holds your data, your searches, your digital life in a complex holding company structure. That's a direct copy of Rockefeller's legal innovation. The pharmaceutical company that developed your medicine within a regulatory system it helped write. The bank that holds your mortgage, structured as a labyrinth of holding companies. They are all students of the same master. Rockefeller didn't just build a company. He didn't just amass a fortune. He engineered a system, a set of ruthless, brilliant, and devastatingly effective methods for eliminating competition, controlling supply chains, capturing regulators, and laundering power through philanthropy. The system is not Standard Oil. The system is the method. And the method did not die in a courtroom in 1911. It went viral. It copied itself into the DNA of every aspiring monopoly that followed. It learned, it adapted, and it found new hosts. Today, in 2025, you do not live in a world of free and open competition. You live inside the machine John D. Rockefeller built. You are a participant in his system, whether you know it or not. Your choices are shaped by it. Your wealth is subtly extracted by it, and your very perception of what's possible is bounded by it. This video is the story of that system. How a con man's son from upstate New York wrote the hidden code for modern capitalism. How his defeat actually spread that code to every corner of our economy. And why understanding this 150-year-old blueprint is the only way to see the real game being played all around you. This isn't just history. This is the story of why the world feels the way it does. This is the story of the unkillable system. To understand the system, you have to understand the coder. And John D. Rockefeller was programmed by a contradiction. He was born in 1839 in Richford, New York, to two forces that would war inside him, and then fuse into a terrifyingly coherent worldview. First, his father, William Avery Rockefeller, known as Devil Bill. Devil Bill was a traveling botanic physician, a fancy term for a snake oil salesman. His specialty was peddling fake cancer elixirs to desperate people. He was a charismatic con man, a bigamist, who would disappear for months on his sales trips, teaching young John Brutal transactional lessons about human nature and the fluidity of morality. He once bragged, "I cheat my boys every chance I get. I want to make 'em Shah." From his father, John learned the world was a game to be won. Rules were for the suckers. and sentimentality was a luxury you couldn't afford. Then there was his mother, Eliza, a devout, severe Baptist who held the family together in Devil Bill's absences. She preached discipline, order, thrift, and the certainty of God's plan. From her, John learned that chaos was a sin, that every penny must be accounted for, and that success was a sign of God's favor for the righteous. Young John Davidson Rockefeller internalized this schizophrenic curriculum. The con man's ruthless pragmatism, the Baptist's moral certitude. He didn't see a conflict, he synthesized them. His core belief became God's orderly, efficient kingdom could and must be built on earth through ruthless earthly control. To be rich was to be righteous. To eliminate wasteful competition was a holy mission. This wasn't hypocrisy, it was a terrifying, unstoppable form of conviction. He took this operating system into his first job as a bookkeeper in Cleveland. He was obsessed with numbers. Ledgers didn't lie. They revealed the hidden architecture of the world, the flows of money, the points of waste, the levers of control. While others dreamed, he calculated. Then, in 1859, near Titusville, Pennsylvania, Colonel Edwin Drake struck oil. The world went mad. It was a classic, chaotic gold rush. Prospectors, wildcatters, flooded the hills. They drilled where they pleased. Gushers would create millionaires overnight. Dry holes would ruin men by sunset. The price of crude oil was a roller coaster. A barrel would be $20 one month, 10 cents the next, as gluts flooded the market, then spike again when shortages hit. It was a boom and bust carnival of greed, luck, and ruin. Everyone saw the oil in the ground. Rockefeller, the bookkeeper, saw the inefficiency, the waste, the sin. He watched from Cleveland as the chaotic drilling frenzy played out. He made a cold, calculated decision he would not drill a single well. Drilling was a lottery. It was dependent on geology and luck, variables he couldn't control. But the business that came after the drilling, that was a math problem, and math problems he could solve. The real value he saw wasn't in the messy, unpredictable crude. It was in refining it, turning that black sludge into clean, clear kerosene to light the lamps of America. Refining was a process. Processes could be optimized. Systems could be built. Control could be established. In 1863, with the saved discipline of his bookkeeper's salary and borrowed money, the 24-year-old Rockefeller invested $4,000 in a small refinery in Cleveland. He called it the Excelsior Works. He didn't enter the oil game to play. He entered it to rewrite the rules. And his first move was to look not at the oil field, but at the entire chaotic board, and decide he would own every square on it. So Rockefeller is in the refining business. Cleveland in the 1860s is packed with refineries, dozens of them, all buying crude from Pennsylvania, all cooking it into kerosene, all selling it to distributors. It's a classic, perfect competitive market. Margins are razor thin. Everyone is one price swing away from bankruptcy. Most businessmen in this situation think one way: how do I compete better? Maybe I get a slight edge on cost. Maybe I sell to a new customer. It's a race to be the best refiner. Rockefeller's brain worked differently. He asked a more radical question: why should I just be a refiner? Look at the process step by step, like his bookkeeper's mind did. 1. Someone drills the crude oil. Profit for the wildcatter. 2. A barrel maker builds a container for it. Profit for the cooper. 3. A railroad ships it in a tank car. Profit for the railroad baron. 4. My refinery buys it and turns it into kerosene. My slim profit. 5. I sell the kerosene to a distributor. Profit for the distributor. 6. The distributor sells it to a store. Profit for the store. At every single step of this chain, someone else was taking a cut. Someone else's inefficiency was eating into his margin. Someone else had the power to raise a price on him. This wasn't just business, it was a series of vulnerabilities. His solution was revolutionary and brutally simple vertical integration. Own every single step. He didn't want to be the best player in the game. He wanted to own the stadium, the concession stands, the broadcasting rights, and the rulebook. He started buying barrel factories. Why pay a cooper 25 cents a barrel when he could make his own for 15 cents? That 10-cent saving, multiplied by millions of barrels, was a fortune. He didn't just save money, he starved the independent barrel makers who now lost their biggest customer. The railroads. This was his masterstroke. He didn't just buy tank cars, he went to the railroad kings, the Vanderbilts, the Goulds, and he made them an offer they couldn't refuse, an offer wrapped in a threat. Look, he would say, in essence, I am Standard Oil. I will guarantee you a massive, predictable, daily volume of oil to ship from Cleveland to the coast. I will fill your trains to capacity every day, rain or shine. In return, you will give me not just a discount, but a secret rebate. You will charge my competitors the public rate, but you will quietly give me back a piece of their freight charges too. If you refuse, I will build my own pipelines, or I will take my volume to your rival and ruin you. It was a devil's bargain. The railroads, hungry for stable business, agreed. So, imagine you're a small Cleveland refiner. You ship a barrel of oil. The railroad charges you $1. They then turn around and hand 25 cents of your dollar to Rockefeller, their biggest customer. You were literally funding the man who was trying to destroy you. Rockefeller's shipping costs weren't just lower. In many cases, they were negative. He was being paid to ship his oil, while his competitors, paid a premium. He bought warehouses, tank farms, distribution networks, and even the wagons that delivered kerosene to general stores. He brought every function in-house. The effect was a cost advantage that was not marginal but structural and insurmountable. He had turned the entire supply chain from a multi-actor economy into a single, hyper-efficient machine. While his competitors were battling on the thin ice of refining margins, Rockefeller had simply drained the pond and was selling them water at a markup. He could now price his kerosene at a level that put every other refiner out of business and still make a healthy profit. This wasn't competition. This was economic siege warfare, and he was just getting started. By 1870, Rockefeller's vertically integrated machine, now named the Standard Oil Company of Ohio, was the largest and most efficient refiner in the world. But he only controlled about 4% of America's total refining capacity. To his mind, this was an absurdity. It was inefficient. It was sinful. All around him in Cleveland, 25 other refineries chugged along, fighting for scraps, creating what he saw as pointless duplication and price-destroying chaos. His vertical empire gave him a weapon of unprecedented power. Now, he would use it to launch the second phase of his strategy, horizontal integration. If vertical integration is controlling all the steps from raw material to customer, horizontal integration is buying or destroying everyone else who tries to do any of those steps. In early 1872, Rockefeller initiated what became known as the Cleveland Massacre. It wasn't a massacre of blood, but of capital. It was a corporate blitzkrieg executed with chilling precision. His agents fanned out across Cleveland. They visited every single refinery owner. The offer was presented not as a negotiation, but as a binary choice, delivered with the quiet, unblinking certainty of a Baptist deacon. Option A, the good path. Sell your refinery to Standard Oil. We will appraise it fairly. We will pay you in cash or, better yet, invaluable Standard Oil trust certificates. Many of you will be retained as managers. You will have a secure job, a share in the greatest industrial concern the world has ever seen, and you will be part of bringing order to this wasteful industry. You will be rich and respected. Option B, the sinful path. Refuse. We will then invoke the full power of our system. We will drop the price of kerosene in your specific sales territories below your cost of production. Remember, we can do this indefinitely because our costs are half of yours, thanks to our barrels, our railroads, our everything. You will lose money on every single gallon you sell. Your creditors will panic. Your family will beg you to stop. You will watch your life's work bleed out, month by month, until you are bankrupt. And then, Standard Oil will buy the smouldering ruins of your plant from the bank for pennies on the dollar. The message was clear. You can be a wealthy lieutenant in my army, or you can be a corpse on my battlefield. There is no third option. The psychological pressure was immense. Some owners, proud and defiant, chose to fight. They formed alliances, they tried to find alternative rail routes, they appealed to the public. It was hopeless. Rockefeller's secret rebates meant even if they found a railroad, they were still funding him. His scale meant he could absorb losses in Cleveland while making profits in New York. He wasn't fighting a battle, he was conducting a multi-front war, and he had infinite supplies. One by one, the refineries fell. Some sold immediately, seeing the inevitable. The ones who fought lasted a few desperate, terrifying months before capitulating. Within 90 days it was over. Of Cleveland's 26 refineries, 25 now belonged to Standard Oil. The lone holdout was a specialist in a niche product, spared only because it posed no threat. In 3 months, Rockefeller's share of American refining capacity exploded from 4% to over 25%. The Cleveland massacre wasn't just a business victory, it was the creation of a blueprint for monopoly. The formula was now codified. 1. Build an unassailable cost advantage, vertical integration. 2. Offer partnership on favorable terms. 3. If refused, unleash a targeted subsidized price war to inflict maximum financial pain. 4. Acquire the bankrupt competitor for a song. 5. Repeat city by city, industry by industry. This join or die play. Book did more than eliminate competitors. It shattered morale and co-opted the talented. It turned potential leaders of resistance into well-paid executives inside his own system. The message echoed across the country: resistance is not just futile, it is financially suicidal. The era of the independent oilman was ending. The era of the system had begun. By the end of the 1870s, Rockefeller's horizontal conquest was nearly complete. Standard Oil controlled an estimated 90% of America's refining. He was the monopoly. But this supreme power brought 2 existential problems crashing down on him. Problem 1, the law. America had a patchwork of state laws, many designed to prevent exactly what he was doing. A company chartered in Ohio could not own property or operate a business in New York, Pennsylvania, or Texas. Standard Oil of Ohio was legally trapped within its home state, even as its economic tentacles spanned the continent. His empire was a legal fiction, held together by handshake deals, interlocking directorates, and sheer force of will. It was fragile. Problem 2, the mob, the public, the newspapers, the politicians. As his wealth and power grew, so did the fury. He was christened a robber baron. Cartoons depicted him as a giant octopus, its grasping arms strangling railroads, legislatures, and small businesses. He was the most hated man in America. This public hatred was a political toxin that could trigger devastating legal backlash. A lesser man might have consolidated and tried to defend his fort. Rockefeller, the synthesizer of his conman father and his orderly mother, saw these not as threats, but as engineering challenges. The solution he crafted was so elegant, so diabolically clever, that it didn't just save his empire, it invented the very architecture of 20th and 21st century global capitalism. In 1882, Rockefeller's lawyers performed a feat of legal alchemy. They created the Standard Oil Trust. Here's how it worked and why it was a stroke of dark genius. 1. The 41 shareholders of Standard Oil of Ohio, Rockefeller, his brother, Henry Flagler, and his other lieutenants transferred all their stock to a board of 9 trustees. 2. In exchange, they received trust certificates, beautiful engraved pieces of paper that represented a share of the entire empire's profits. 3. This board of trustees now legally owned the stock of not just Standard Oil of Ohio, but of dozens of supposedly independent companies across the country. Standard Oil of New York, Standard Oil of New Jersey, Standard Oil of California, and so on. 4. The trustees, with Rockefeller as chief, then exercised complete control over all these companies. They set production quotas, allocated markets, and pooled profits. Think about what this did. It created a corporate ghost. Standard Oil of Ohio still existed, obeying Ohio law. Standard Oil of New York obeyed New York law. But hovering above them all, invisible to state regulators, was the T. Rust, a spectral entity that unified everything. It was a financial superbrain, a central nervous system with no physical body the law could lay hands on. The legal barriers, problem 1, were vaporized. The trust wasn't a company operating in a state. It was a private agreement among individuals holding assets. It existed in the legal ether. The public hatred, problem 2, was subtly diffused. Who do you attack? The visible local refinery that provides jobs, or the abstract faraway trust? The system became harder to see and therefore harder to hate. This was the birth of the modern holding company structure. The trust produced nothing, refined nothing, sold nothing. It only owned and controlled. Its product was power. The impact was instantaneous and was copied everywhere. The sugar trust, the whiskey trust, the tobacco trust, all rose in imitation. But Rockefeller's was the prototype. Now, fast forward in your mind through the 20th century. See the evolution. The trust, 1882, morphs into the pure holding company. The holding company becomes Berkshire Hathaway, a shell that owns insurance, candy, railroads, and batteries. It becomes Alphabet, a holding company that owns Google, YouTube, Waymo, and life science ventures. It becomes Meta, a holding company for Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and the metaverse. BR first. Becomes the multi-layered global corporate structures of every major bank and pharmaceutical giant. One of these is a direct descendant of the Legbar Bar. Al Ghost Rockefeller summoned in 1882 to solve his problems. He had successfully outsourced the soul of his corporation to a shadow entity. He had not just built a monopoly, he had invented the very vessel in which modern monopoly would forever after safely reside. The game board was now not only his, he had invented a new, hidden dimension in which to play it. By the dawn of the 20th century, Rockefeller's ghost, the Standard Oil Trust, was the single most powerful economic entity on the planet. It controlled 91% of oil refining and 85% of final sales. Rockefeller himself was worth nearly $1 billion in $1900, roughly 2% of the entire US GDP. He wasn't just rich, he was a sovereign nation of one. But the shadow he cast had grown too long. The public fury he'd tried to outmaneuver with the trust was now a roaring fire. The spark was Ida Tarbell, a journalist whose own father had been ruined by Standard Oil's tactics. She spent 5 years investigating the company, publishing the history of the Standard Oil Company in 1904. Her work wasn't just exposé, it was an autopsy performed on a living beast. She laid bare the secret rebates, the predatory pricing, the industrial espionage, the systematic corruption. She gave the American people the vocabulary to name what they feared, the invisible monopoly. The political dam broke. In 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt, the original trustbuster, filed suit under the Sherman Antitrust Act. The legal battle raged for 5 years. Finally, in 1911, the Supreme Court issued its landmark ruling. Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly. It must be broken into smaller, independent companies that would compete with one another. The octopus, it seemed, was to be chopped into pieces. Cue the headlines: David slaying Goliath, the triumph of the little guy. It was portrayed as the system's death knell. Rockefeller's empire, the papers declared, was no more. Here is the truth they missed, the stunning twist in the story. The 1911 breakup was the single greatest financial event in John D. Rockefeller's life. When the decree came down, Standard Oil was split into 34 geographically and functionally distinct companies. Standard Oil of New Jersey, Standard Oil of New York, Standard Oil of California, Standard Oil of Ohio, and on and on. Rockefeller, who still held a mountain of trust certificates, didn't lose his ownership. His certificates were simply converted into proportional shares in all 34 of these new baby standards. He went from owning a piece of one giant lumbering monopoly to owning a diversified portfolio of 34% legally independent, now highly motivated, and suddenly competitive companies. And something miraculous happened to stock prices. Before the breakup, a share of Standard Oil Trust certificate was worth about $600. In the months after the breakup, as these new entities raced to expand, innovate, and capture new markets freed from their old internal agreements, their combined stock value skyrocketed. That $600 share was now worth over $2,000. Rockefeller's personal wealth nearly tripled. The government hadn't broken the system. It had performed a corporate mitosis, and in the process, it had supercharged Rockefeller's fortune. The breakup was a forced reorganization that created more value, not less. It proved a dark axiom of the system sometimes: to grow stronger, you must first be broken apart. And the final, most poetic act? Over the next century, these 34 children of the original trust began to find each other again. They slithered back together through mergers and acquisitions, like droplets of mercury coalescing. Standard Oil of New Jersey plus Standard Oil of New York. equal to Exxon Mobil, Standard Oil of California plus others, equal to Chevron, Standard Oil of Indiana plus Standard Oil of Ohio, equal to parts of BPBR. The monopoly that was shattered in 1911 has, through the patient logic of the system, largely reconstituted itself into three global behemoths. The breakup wasn't an ending, it was a strategic retreat, a dispersal of seeds. And from those seeds grew the same forest, just arranged in slightly different groves. Oh, if Standard Oil's true legacy isn't a company, but a playbook. Let's open that book to the page you're living on right now. Let's trace Rockefeller's fingerprints on the devices in your hands and the services you can't live without. Maison, the Everything Trust. Remember Rockefeller's vertical integration? He owned the barrels, the rails, the distribution. Jeff Bezos built the digital and physical mirror. Amazon started selling books, but its obsession became owning the entire stack. It built the warehouses, fulfillment centers, invented the logistics network, Amazon Logistics, created the payment system, and then built the foundational infrastructure of the modern internet itself, Amazon Web Services, AWS. Here's the Rockefeller masterstroke. AWS now hosts the websites of Netflix, Airbnb, and even Amazon's retail competitors. Rockefeller's railroad charged his competitors to ship their oil. Amazon's cloud charges its competitors to run their very businesses. Its vertical integration, so complete it feeds on the ecosystem it created. Google Alphabet, the perfect digital trust. The 1882 Standard Oil Trust was a holding company designed for legal obfuscation and control. In 2015, Google created Alphabet for eerily similar reasons, to separate its cash cow search business from its moonshot bets, to streamline management, to optimize taxes, and to create a legal buffer between its various entities. Sound familiar? It's the corporate ghost, updated for the cloud. When regulators look at Alphabet, they don't see one monopoly, they see a constellation of separate companies. Rockefeller would nod in approval. Big Pharma, masters of regulatory capture. Rockefeller didn't just beat his competitors, he rewrote the rules of the race. He lobbied for railroad regulations that cemented his rebates and for Keros. Inequality standards only his refineries could easily meet. Today, the pharmaceutical industry doesn't just sell to the FDA-regulated market, it funds the FDA through user fees, IT staffs regulatory bodies with its former executives, and it writes the patent laws that guarantee its monopolies. They didn't invent this, they downloaded it from the Rockefeller Playbook. Control the referee and you never lose the game. Modern finance, the holding company fortress. After the 2008 financial crisis, regulators tried to tame the banks with Dodd-Frank. They ran headlong into the holding company structure, Rockefeller's 1882 solution to the problem of regulatory reach. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, these are not single banks. They are holding companies, modern trusts, that own banks, investment firms, and asset managers. Regulating them is like trying to nail jelly to a wall. Which entity do you hold accountable, the parent or the subsidiary? Rockefeller solved that puzzle for them over a century ago. His playbook is not a relic, it's the active operating system, vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, the corporate trust shell, regulatory capture. It's the same code, running on new hardware. You are not witnessing new forms of monopoly, you are witnessing the perpetual reinvention of the first one. What about the hatred, the robber baron label? Rockefeller had one final brilliant innovation to solve the problem of his own reputation, an innovation that would outlast his empire and become the ultimate tool for perpetuating systemic power, strategic philanthropy. In 1913, as the antitrust verdict still echoed, Rockefeller established the Rockefeller Foundation with an initial gift of $250 million, over $7 billion today. On the surface, it was magnificent charity. It funded medical research that eradicated hookworm in the American South. It established the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. It created entire fields of scientific inquiry. But look deeper, with the eyes of a bookkeeper's son, tax alchemy. It transformed taxable corporate wealth into a permanent tax-exempt foundation. The money left his private estate, but the influence the control over how that vast wealth was used remained. 2. Legacy laundering. The most hated man in America became the world's greatest philanthropist. The narrative flipped overnight. The man who crushed competitors was now the benefactor saving children. It didn't just buy good PR, it bought historical redemption. 3. Systemic influence. This is the most potent layer. The Rockefeller Foundation didn't just give to medicine, it architected modern American medicine. By funding specific universities and research, like the Flexner Report, it championed a model of medicine based on pharmaceuticals, expensive technology, and centralized hospitals, while marginalizing holistic, community-based, or alternative practices. It didn't just fund science, it funded the direct ion of science, shaping the very reality of what health meant for a century. The pharmaceutical companies that rose to dominate this model were often spin-offs from Standard Oil's own chemical divisions. Today, every billionaire's foundation, Gates, Zuckerberg, Bloomberg, follows this exact tripartite model: tax efficiency, reputation management, and systemic influence. They fund global health, shape education policy, and influence government agendas. They aren't just giving away money, they are investing in the societal operating system. Rockefeller didn't just give back. He invented the mechanism by which extreme wealth could translate into perpetual, unassailable soft power. The final piece of the system was not a corporate structure, but a moral one. He learned you could not just own the market, you had to own the story. Let's make this personal. Let's do a day-in-the-life audit through Rockefeller's lens. You wake up. You check your phone. A device running on an alphabet operating system, Google, using chips made by monopolistic foundries. You scroll through Instagram, a Meta property, acquired through horizontal consolidation. You search for a coffee recipe on Google, 92% market share, higher than Standard Oil's peak. You drive to work. You fill up with gas from ExxonMobil, Chevron, or BP, all Standard Oil descendants. You pay with a Visa or MasterCard network, an oligopoly that charges merchants a railroad rebate on every transaction. T-Work, you use software, Hosba, Bar. TED on Amazon's AWS or Microsoft's Azure Cloud. You order office supplies from Amazon, leveraging its vertical integration for next-day delivery. You come home. You stream a movie on Netflix, which runs on AWS. You take a prescribed medication from Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson, developed within the pharma regulatory complex. You check your bank account with Chase or Bank of America, a holding company fortress. At every turn, you are a revenue unit in Rockefeller's system. Let's quantify the tribute. Gasoline oil, approximately $2,500 a year. Amazon General Retailing. Extraction, approximately $1,500 a year. Premiums, fees, data. Big tech services data subscription, approximately $1,200 a year. Healthcare premiums and pharma, approximately $3,000 plus a year. Beyond insurance, finance, fees, interest spread, approximately $1,000 a year. That's a conservative $9,200 annual Rockefeller tax. Over an adult lifetime, that's over $500,000 of wealth, systematically transferred not to innovators or neighbors, but to the heirs of a system designed for extraction. The genius of the system is that it makes escape a punishing act of self-denial. Could you avoid Amazon? Possibly, with great inconvenience and cost. Could you avoid Google? Try using a map that's not Google Maps. Could you avoid the banking system, the pharmaceutical medical complex, the energy oligopoly? The system isn't maintained by force but by woven necessity. It offers you incredible convenience, real value, and seamless efficiency. The price is your participation in a machine that funnels wealth upward, away from your community and into the ledger books of entities that follow a 150-year-old blueprint. You are not a citizen in this economy. You are a consumer in his machine. So, what do we do, knowing we live inside an architecture built by a long-dead oil baron? You have three paths, none easy, all consequential. Path 1. Acceptance. Acknowledge that consolidation and systemic extraction are the thermodynamic end state of advanced capitalism. Embrace the efficiency. Use the 2-day shipping, the instant search, the life-saving drugs. Understand that the wealth will concentrate as water finds the lowest point. This is the path of pragmatic comfort. Path 2, resistance. This is the noble, difficult path. Actively break your own convenience. Show. P. Local, even at 20% premiums. Use alternative search engines and social platforms. Support aggressive antitrust action and politicians who mean it. This path trades personal efficiency for a principled stand against consolidation. It is a daily vote against the system. Path 3. Understanding and positioning. This is the cold, pragmatic revelation. If you cannot beat the extractors, you can, in a small way, become one. The system concentrates wealth into the equity of its dominant players. Rockefeller didn't just run Standard Oil, he owned it. The modern equivalent is not working for Amazon, but owning a slice of Amazon. It's owning shares in the very monopolies that are designed to extract value. It's aligning your tiny financial trajectory with the massive gravitational pull of the system itself. This isn't investment advice, it's pattern recognition. It is the logical conclusion of seeing the machine for what it is. Rockefeller died in 1937. Standard Oil had been dead for 26 years. Yet, he lived to see his methods conquer steel, finance, and agriculture. He saw his foundation reshape the world. He saw his grandchildren ascend to the pinnacles of global power. He proved that building a great company is one thing, but building the system in which all companies must operate, that is immortality. The question he leaves us with in 2025 is not, how do we break up Standard Oil? It's, now that you can see the system, what will you do inside of it? Because the system isn't Standard Oil. The system is the method, and the method is forever.